Okay, this is Andy Scholl with my Candid Conversation podcast, and I've wanted to interview and have a conversation with my mom and my dad. So here we are. And Mom is turning 90 on 7 days, 1 week from today. Mom will be 90. Dad is 91, and a half. So if there was a name for this episode of my podcast, it would be 181 years of wisdom. And Dad said you'd call it what? 181 years of
experience.
Yes. So you can call it whatever you want, but there's 181 years right here. And then a few more tacked on with me. This has multiple purposes. This is for me. This is something I want, and I thought, why not share it? Because Dad has often told me, I call Dad the wisest man I know. And it's surprising how few people ask him about his wisdom, including me. Like sometimes I'm like, I gotta ask Dad more questions, ask Mom more questions, learn from my mom and dad. So this is Don and Sandy. So I'm gonna just start by getting this conversation going with some questions we've talked about. We've been through a lot in life. We're still going through a lot, but we're just trying to keep learning and growing and letting love lead. That's right. So this is a question to Mom and Dad here now. Sometimes you ask people, well, what would you do different if you could live all over again? But that's not possible. So I like to pose this question of, what would you tell someone that's seeking God, peace, comfort, and purpose? Like, what is the most profound wisdom you have learned in your life?
It's a difficult question. And whatever I would probably say today would probably be a little bit different tomorrow. But, you know, you look at life and profound wisdom, I mean, that's pretty psychologically deep. But you look back, you just have faith in the future, and you work hard today with a lot of trust in your heart that there will be a tomorrow, and what you're working for will be there. As we grow up, we have a vision of what we want to do in life, and we make a lot of sacrifices to get there with no guarantee that we'll get what we think we want. But we have the faith to keep on working hard, making sacrifices, and it's different for everybody. And in my experience, most of the things that I've worked for have happened, and I'm grateful for that. And just basically, the key is work hard, save money, and I think you can probably add all the rest of the adjectives to that. It's about as simple as it can get.
What would you say, Mom? Like, if you could distill the most profound piece of wisdom or guiding principle for life?
Well, I guess I really would have to say, like you said, let love lead, and let the heart be open to whatever experiences that you feel are the ones that God would want you to do. And I failed a lot, but I've also learned a lot and loved a lot, and I had peace when I followed love. and like Dad said, we want to work toward the things that we feel are most important in life. And so I knew that I wanted to get an education. So I finally did. And I got a teaching profession, and I did that. And then when we had children, Dad and I realized that I needed to be home with the children. So I left my teaching profession and I stayed home with the children. I learned some things. I learned to sew, and I learned how to do calligraphy. And then I had a little preschool, and so I did some things, but I was home with the kids. And I stayed home until Andy was a junior in high school.
So for those of you who don't know, many of you know, but I have an older sister, and my brother, and then me. So Mom, you were home a total of about 20 years, right? You taught for 7 years, and then you had kids. Then when I was middle school, Mom went back. Mom has like a master's plus 90 or something, don't you?
Yeah.
So if you were, what would be the piece of wisdom though, Mom, that you could distill from all that? Like, I mean, I've been asked by a therapist before in certain situations, what would you tell your younger self there? And so maybe that's sometimes the best way to frame it. Like, what would the wisdom be? Not in the sense that you need to have regrets, because we can't do it all over, and regrets don't really get us anywhere. But like knowing what you know now, let's go back to the 18-year-old you. What would be the piece of wisdom you'd want that 18-year-old to take with them and travel through life and just never let go of that little nugget?
Well, the nugget would be to be obedient to what was in your heart, and ask other people, like your parents and others, and then you follow love, and you have peace in your heart. And when you have that, then you'll know that you're on the right path at that time. But I think probably the most important thing is wait until you're a little older, until you make some final decisions. And then when you do that, and you have peace, and you're going forward in your life, I think it's important that we keep growing. So take advice.
Yeah.
And keep God in your heart and Jesus in your life, because the wisdom from them is the most important. So, and my favorite verse is, be kind one to another, tender-hearted, forgiving one another, even as God, for Christ's sake, has forgiven you. And I've had that verse in my heart from very early on.
I can attest to that, Mom. I always think of you. When I think of you, I think of that verse, and when I read that verse, I think of you.
Yeah.
Because that's always been a really, that's been a piece of wisdom that you think about. It's beautiful. I think it's the last verse in Ephesians 4.
Yeah, 32.
Yeah. And I'm thankful, like you and Dad, I mean, that's one thing we've talked about a lot. The religion Mom was raised in, and then Dad went to that church also. And it's what they raised me in. And many of you listening to this, some of you might not have any idea, but there's been a great upheaval and like a revelation of what this church really is and the foundation it was really built on, and a little different and maybe a lot different than some of us believed and put our heart into believing. But I would say, despite that, you guys put in me a faith. You taught me about Jesus, and like Mom said about peace, letting, like that's when I say let love lead. It's almost like you could just say let Jesus lead, because God is love, so Jesus is love, and Jesus is peace, and so when we follow Him, and anyway, I'm thankful you guys have given me that, and I'm thankful, like, one of the things that we've, like, every time I come and visit Mom and Dad, we have some pretty rip-roaring visits, don't we?
Yes, we do.
and we hash over things, and it's not like,
We keep growing.
yeah, and
We keep learning.
so, Dad, what would be, if you could, that 18-year-old you, if you thought of what you would tell him?
Like I said, it's a hard question because a lot of the wisdom or the understanding that I have that guides my own life came from my parents, and it comes from reading the Bible, and there's a great deal of wisdom about how to live life in the Bible. And there's a lot of wisdom in how to live life in a lot of self-help books, and I've read both. But as I look back at it now,
At 18,
yeah, at 18,
What would you tell
when
18-year-old
we're a
Dawn?
child, we think as a child, and at that time, other people have a huge influence on our life. And it varies from person to person, of course. And I think I got a lot of my direction and a lot of my advice and purposes from the people around me. And I got many of my purposes in life even from my elementary teachers and high school teachers. And but a lot of, when I look back at, you decide what you want to do, but you're never sure how it's going to turn out. But you start. And of course, that's one of the guiding principles of my life is just start. And that's sometimes the hardest thing to do. Sort of like, you know, just get out of bed and get going. And
could I say something about when he was 18 years old?
Sure. Well, can she, Dad? Are you prepared for this?
when I was 18 years old.
Yeah.
Okay, Mom.
Well,
They dated since Dad was, what, 15 and Mom was 14 or something?
Yeah, well, let me just start back.
Okay,
again. So,
hold on.
Anyway, so at 14, I met this lady at a 4-H square dance. And from then on, I never let her go. And so a lot of who I am today comes from my relationship not only with her, but her entire family and the entire church family in Walla Walla at that time. And they were kind, they were very likable and even lovable. And I was drawn into that family. So I had not only my family, but I had another family. And how did this all start? What was I?
Well, Mom wanted to say something about when you were
Okay.
18, Dad.
Okay,
And so
so
you
then-
wanted to fill
so
us
then-
up to where you bring us up to speed at
Okay.
what you were at 18.
So I'm 14 and I start to high school, and then that's sort of where my life begins to take a turn, and I'd say turn for a positive turn. And I began simply being part of Sandy's family. and part of the church family in Walla Walla.
And you
I'll just
experienced
leave it
love,
there.
didn't you, Don?
So I'm 18.
Yeah. So what were you gonna say? And one question we're gonna get to is what is love, and how my dad did not really. It was, yeah, what you learned love was, and then what you wished you had learned that it was at a younger age. But anyway, we're going to talk about how they feel like what is love. But Mom, we're getting there. What did you want to say about Dad when he was 18?
Well, he was persistent. He was shy, but he was persistent. And I wasn't the same as he was because I grew up in a loving family, and he didn't. And so when he found something that was love, he wanted it. And so he was persistent in following the lead of love.
Mm-hmm. And I think this love, and you guys correct me if I'm wrong as we go in this conversation, this love that we're talking about, it was more of a love than my dad had experienced in his home. But yet it was still a love that had conditions that were controlled by the church.
Yeah.
And I want Mom to tell us a story that kind of epitomizes that, as she was the youngest of 6 sisters. But Dad, before we get to that, so when I think of Dad and like wisdom, there's certain things, Dad, you have taught me. And this is one thing I admire about my dad, is that Dad is a learner. He's always learning and thinking about things, and he quickly will say, oh, well, that really wasn't right how I did it, and he doesn't beat himself up over it. And he just acknowledges it and learns. And so, like he said, Dad has always read the Bible. I've always seen my dad read the Bible. I know that's given you a foundation of faith and faithfulness that I appreciate. But there was another motto, accepting current reality. And I think you mentioned that earlier about, you have goals in life, but they're never going to, like us 3 kids, did we turn out how you wanted us to turn out or how you thought? Of course not. And you've had some devastating experiences with all of us. And yet this motto, or Dad learned it from this book, Rapid Relief from Emotional Distress, and I read it, and you put that in me, accepting current reality. Like and that's one piece of wisdom, Dad, that you've helped me with. Instead of trying to change the situation, just accept it and learn and make the best of it. And I've seen Dad do that in life.
Yeah, I think that would be a key word that I could say that has shaped them. And this happened later in life, and it's just that word, acceptance. It brings a great deal of peace to me, because when I say acceptance, it doesn't mean I like it, but I accept it. And it helps me just to navigate the messiness of life. And like Andy says, children don't always turn out like you would idealistically like them to turn out. And we go through a lot of experiences that are pretty depressing in a sense. But after a lot of that has happened, it's then hard to say, well, just accept it. Well, I have to. And what it does, it just helps me to be comfortable, because these are things I could be negative about, that would frustrate me, and upset me because I want to change them and I can't change them. And when I just say, well, this is the life that surrounds me, and in life it's messy. There are divorces, there are dishonest issues, there's cheating, and there's lying, and family disputes, and things like that. And the things you would really not like to accept, but they have always been there, and they will always be there. And for me, that's a kind of a poor explanation, but if I just accept that, I myself have a great deal of peace in that.
Yeah, well, when we were talking the other night about what we might try to talk about in this, one of the questions I had written down to ask Mom and Dad is, like, do you feel complete? Does your life feel complete? Do you feel at peace? Do you feel loved? And Dad just very spontaneously and sincerely and genuinely was like, I'm at peace. And I was like, wow. And it's not. And I know my dad well enough, it's like, it wasn't just saying that because it was the right thing to say or because that's what I wanted him to say or that's what he should say. I was like, I felt it. And I marvel at it because I know life hasn't been easy for Dad and things haven't turned out just the way you would want them to. But because of acceptance, yeah.
So going back to that, there was a man when we were in Edmonds, but he said this. He said one of the greatest aims in life is to peace in uncertainty.
Oh yeah.
And I remembered that.
Mm-hmm.
When we have a spiritual foundation and faith in that spiritual foundation, that's one of the gifts that I think at least I can receive from having a spiritual foundation. Mm-hmm. And then the other thing that has given me a lot of peace is that I love those verses that say, there's no fear in love, but perfect love casteth out fear.
Mm, yeah.
And one of the obstacles in my life as I've lived it is the fear of taking the next step, whatever it be. I mean, the next step in college or whatever, the next step that just tomorrow. And anyway, those are some of the thoughts that have given me a measure of peace.
Well, that's something that I've seen, like, and has been very impressive to me for both of you, is like something we all put a lot of our faith in our whole lives was the church that we called the truth. And there's a lot of truth about the truth that we've learned and acknowledged and talked about, and maybe we've, like, I know Dad and I and Mom, we've talked, there's a lot of things. I was in the ministry for 25 years and I saw a lot of things that bothered me, but we would always think, well, but this is the truth and this is the ministry. And then to come to a point where you realize, well, it's not the truth and it's not the ministry. And I've seen a lot of people fear knowing the truth about the truth. And what I have marveled at with both of you is you've sat down and you've read the history. You've read and you've been willing to talk about it and hear what I've had to say from seeing the very inside, the bowels of the ministry and the corruptness and the dysfunction and the lack of love often, and the pride and the many things covered up, the secrets covered up, the immoralities, lots of things, but here you are, and it's been what you've put your faith in your whole life, but yet you're not afraid
To see the truth.
to see the truth about what's called the truth. And as we know, it's not the truth. Jesus is the truth,
Right.
the life, and the way.
Yeah.
The way, the truth, and the life. And so that's one thing I've really admired about you. And that's some of the rip-roaring visits I've said we've had, because I've shared things I've seen in my time in the ministry and experienced that mom and dad don't like to hear. And I always try to like maybe justify them away, or it's hard to admit something you've put so much into might not be what you thought it was.
Well, a lot of the things, our life up to this point, it's been a good life.
Mm-hmm.
And there's been a lot of wonderful relationships in our life, wonderful friends, and that have encouraged us. And we still have those friends today, though we may not see too much of them based on our age and where we are. But those are positives.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you get a chance to look at your own life, and I like to think of, what helps me is that it says somewhere that examine your own heart, and which means, you know, examine your own life. And I often look at my life, well, what is it that's been, what drew me to this system, 2x2 ministry, meetings in the home, and well, what was it that drew me to that? Well, when I really am honest and I look back, what drew me to that was the love and the kindness of the people. Mm-hmm. And secondary, there because I believed in. I was a believer from 8 years old. So I wasn't converted to anything. I just took my belief and I just transferred it into being part of this wonderful human family. And so as I look back and examine it, that's where my faith was. And of course, lately, since 2020, there have been some, I'll just say, scandals and things that have been questionable, and it didn't really shake my faith. It kind of just again gets back to that one. Life is messy.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean because I'm in
Yeah.
this system that it's not going to be messy.
Right.
And I'm very comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
Things have gone off the rail, so to speak, but we still have friends, mm-hmm. and we have friends that have left, and we have friends that have stayed, mm-hmm. and I'm at peace with that. And I'm trying to think, well, what my point was is, I think if I really am honest, my faith from the very beginning was in the people. Mm. And we know that we're going to be disappointed if our faith is in the people.
Yeah. Well, so Mom tells a story. Like Mom's family was warm and loving. You're the young. She's the youngest of 6 sisters. She's the only one still living.
Yeah.
So my Aunt Shirley was 8 years older than Mom, yes. And then there was Aunt Shirley, and then Aunt Jeannie, and then Leela and Lola were twins, right in the middle. And then there was my Aunt Bernie, and then my mom. So there was only 8 years between the oldest and the youngest. And so, Mom. So, and Grandma and Grandpa alive and good. They were. I remember going there when I was a kid. It was a loving family. There was, and with my aunts and cousins, there was a lot of love, but there was conditions to that love. Yeah. It wasn't always an unconditional love, but it was better than the love my dad came from in his home. And so I want Dad to share that story, what you said about, because my grandpa Scholl, my dad's dad, died when you were how old?
One.
One. And he had one older brother, my Uncle Bill, who's passed away. And then his mom remarried my grandpa Cockerline, and so you were raised with a stepdad. And my memories of what you've told me about your stepdad is there wasn't a lot of warmth. He was definitely favored the two kids he had that were my dad's then half brother and half sister. And you said that you were never told, you never remember being told, I love you. Is that correct?
Correct.
So his parents, his stepdad was basically the only dad he ever knew, never told him he loved him, was pretty harsh to you, not warm, never any like compliments or appreciation shared. So then tell me, Dad, about the feeling you had about how old you were when your mom was folding the laundry, what that feeling, that was an amazing story.
Well, trying to make a long story short, the stepfather I had he just was not cut out to be a father, and some people aren't. And as a child, you don't know the psychology of all that because you just want your dad to be your dad and to, take you fishing and play ball with you and pick you up in his arms, and that never happened. And my mother, it was a very British family, very formal, very hardworking. They didn't go to church. They had high ideals, didn't drink, didn't smoke, just worked hard. And I was very, very fortunate, given that my father died, that I had this stepfather because we had a farm and we had always plenty of food. We were always warm. We had plenty of clothes. And the one example or thing that I can remember when it comes to, and at best that I can remember, I don't ever recall my mother just saying, I love you. Or my father at all. Not even my father probably, I don't even know that if he ever even said thank you. And anyway, so I remember this one day, my mother, she always washed. She kept the house clean. And when she got done with the house, she went outside and worked in the fields. And this one day, I was folding clothes, and she'd always fold the clothes and put them in this drawer very neatly, so we would always have clean clothes. And I just thought to myself, well, Mom, just talk to me, because it was just busy doing what she had to do. Clean the house, wash the clothes, wash the dishes, and cook the food. And it was, so that's how I was brought up, and it was pretty different from this family that Sandy was a part of.
Yeah,
I mean, I just fell in love with everybody, and I fell in love with her sisters. I really fell in love with her mother, and it was just something so dramatic for me as a 16, 17, 18-year-old boy. I couldn't believe it. I'd go sometimes and visit Sandy's mom, and Sandy might not be there, and she would always talk to me.
Yeah.
In fact, I would go there and I would do the listening, she would do the talking, and then we would get done and I'd go and leave, and she'd say thanks for visiting with me, and I never said a word. So
That you remember.
that I remember. Anyway, so it was just starkly different from the life I'd been how I had been brought up with, and I'm totally taken in a good way. I mean,
Yeah.
when I say that, taken in, I mean, they had me.
So, the way I've always seen it, Dad, is, and what you said confirms that, is that you had all your basic needs met,
Yes.
but there wasn't a lot of warmth or
No.
felt love,
No.
like emotional
No.
connection or attention.
No, it was just,
Well, you learn to work hard, though.
learn to work hard.
You got a work ethic.
And you know, and I look back, and it was, in many respects, I couldn't have asked, given that my mother was 17 when she got married, and she had these 2 boys, and my dad died, and this is 1937, a dark time in this country due to the Depression. My mother had nothing, no education, no job. I'm still not sure how we even survived for a year and a half before she got married to my stepfather. But without that happening,
Right.
our life, I could have ended up in an orphanage.
Yeah.
And I still don't really know what happened to me in that year and a half. No one ever told me. But anyway, we had a wonderful life.
Mm-hmm.
The only thing that was missing was human relationships.
Mm-hmm.
We had horses, and we had a little donkey, and we had a little cart, and you just couldn't ask.
Your
Basically,
uncles were kind of good to you too, Don.
yeah, I had some uncles that did pay attention to me, I thought, and of course at that age, the only person you really think about is yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Later in life, my stepfather actually did try to change,
Mm-hmm.
and I have a lot of regrets in that. I had a lot of resentments that made it really difficult for me to get very close to him.
Mm-hmm.
I could have, and I didn't, and I'm sorry for that. Anyway, that's kind of just sums it up.
Yeah.
So,
I went from one world to
right.
another world.
So then we kind of take a step up to the love in Mom's home,
Yeah.
but yet there were still conditions to it. And
But I didn't realize that when I was young.
tell,
because-
yeah, okay,
Yeah.
go ahead, finish.
Well, for one thing, my dad always made sure that I got up in the middle of the night because I had a little problem, as you know, and that's the way it was. But he always came and got me up, and then if I had leg aches, he would take me and put me with my mom, and so she would rub my legs, and I had all this warmth.
Mhm.
So from the very beginning, there was love that showed.
Mhm.
And then when we were older, we always, on Saturday, we were getting ready for Sunday. Sunday was a very big day. And so Mom would always lay out our clothes, make sure that our dresses were okay, and Daddy, we only had one pair of shoes, really, and so he always took and washed the soles of our shoes. And then we generally waxed the floors, and Daddy and Mom would put socks on our feet, and we would shine the floors. So that's how I remember getting ready for Sunday. And when we were there, my oldest sister was Shirley. And so when people would say, well, I surely want to do this and I surely want to do that, and I thought of my sister Shirley, it was so funny because I didn't know what people were saying exactly. And I didn't have any books or anything. I had a hanky. And I could fold it any way I wanted, and there was some little ways that my mom showed me how to do it. And then, of course, I couldn't stay awake because I was so quiet. But they
Are you
would
talking
let me-
about in meeting?
Yeah, in
Yeah.
reading. And then she would let me go to sleep. So that was my first years. I had a sister that was next to me, and as Andy said, there were twins on the other side, and this little me who had curly blonde hair. My mother's hair was black. So, and then my dad said, they always wanted a boy. So my dad said, and this was always to remind me, that he said, Mom, we have another little girl, but she's the cutest little bald-headed girl I ever did see. So I always remembered that they didn't resent that I was a boy. And that was
So
a really big
you had parents that definitely gave you an emotional
Oh,
feeling
yes.
of being loved.
Yeah.
But at the same time, so let's get to this, the conditions part.
Yeah, when I
It's
get
like,
older.
so as she gets older and in the church, there's this, we were taught, and Mom was taught, I was taught, this is what we all learn, that this is the truth, this is the way, this is the right church on earth. And you really were never given an option to be like, oh, well, you can question it, or it's okay if you don't want to go. You know, when you get to a certain age, maybe your teenage years or whatever, it was always an expectation that you go, and that if you didn't make this choice, we call it professing, by the time you were 15 or 16, it would be like there would be definitely a felt pressure and words said that a little worried about you because you haven't made your profession to follow Jesus and be a part of this church, which means then you take part in meetings and become a more active member. And there was never a clause or an option to say, well, you don't have to. It's okay if you choose not to. And if you have questions about this church or it doesn't feel right to you, it's okay to ask. We never even thought about that. That wasn't even thought about. And so, how old were you? There was, Mom maybe was the rebel of the family. Not in a bad way. It's just you cut your hair because women weren't supposed to cut their hair at all. And so Mom had a phase where you cut your hair, but then that was frowned on by your family, of course.
Yes, it was.
And then tell us about the time you didn't want to go to meeting.
Yeah, okay.
How old were you?
I'm in high school.
You were in high school?
I'm in high school.
Okay.
And I decided that I wasn't going to go. So when everybody got ready for meeting, I said, well, I'm not going to go. And nobody said anything to me. And so I thought, well, they'll just go without me. But Daddy didn't start the car. He didn't do anything. Everybody just was in the car. Nothing else is happening. And so I thought, well, I absolutely can't not go if Mom and Dad and my sisters don't go. So I hurried up and got dressed, and I got in the car. Nobody said anything. Daddy didn't say anything, Mom didn't say anything. My sisters were all very quiet, and Mother started to sing hymns. And so that's what I remember, that I would have to go. That was, I mean, if I really wanted to rebel, I would have said, I'm not going to go after this, so don't wait for me. And I probably would walk out of the house and go down the street so that they wouldn't, but I didn't. And when I told my mom, I said, well, Mom, because they wanted me to have long hair, and in a nice way, but I said, well, Mom, you know what? The twins, they cut their hair, they cut bangs, and they have little curls down here. what's the difference if you cut a little or cut a lot? Never got an answer. But then my sister, when I was much older in college, and I still have, I did in high school. I started to grow out my hair. So when you see pictures of my high school graduation, it's all no bangs and it's curled down here. It was growing out. But then my sister convinced me that if Samson's hair, his strength was in his hair, maybe mine was there too.
Which I find so
It's
odd
not
because
good. Yeah.
that's something that I've experienced, and maybe some of you have, is that there's certain things that have nothing to do with the doctrine of Jesus, nothing to do with salvation, nothing to do with love, that were really important, like certain outward appearance, and for women, dress and long hair. And so then you just make up some scripture that had no,
It isn't really important.
like Samson's long hair had nothing to do with women having long hair. Zero, nada, nothing. But it's nice to just find scriptures that support what you want to believe. And
then there's
so-
it's scripture that says women have long hair and men have short hair, and that's the way it's supposed to be. But that's Paul, and it's only one place.
yeah,
So we
Yeah.
take scripture here and there, and we make our children, we make me believe, and then I passed it on to my children.
yeah,
And the things that my parents didn't do, I wanted to do. And one of the things was I wanted them to know the scripture, because I didn't. In when I was in high school, I read the New Testament, and I believed, that 2 by 2, and I believed that there was certain things that Jesus wanted me to do, but not the things that I was taught necessarily. But I knew about the love, the joy, the peace, the long suffering, and all that. I knew that. So when I was 11, almost 12, I was in a Bible convention, and I felt the Spirit saying, Sandy, you aren't a part of this. Your mom and dad aren't responsible for you anymore. You're responsible for yourself. So I thought, I'm going to have to profess, and I did. And so I continued to do that. And then the other thing that I'm so sorry about is that I believed this was the only church, the only way that you could get to heaven. So I would tell my friends about it, and I'd ask them to come. So, not too many people. And then I saw other people that were in other churches, and they'd go, oh, Jesus saves, or praise the Lord. And I thought, no, that's not right either. So anyway, and then Don came along, and he loved me, he cared for me, and so
But here's,
I
okay.
brought him in.
Well, here's the thing too. So Don comes along, and I fit into the family. I like them, they like me.
Yeah.
But along the whole line, I'm an outsider, very clearly. No one had said, well, Don, you're an outsider. The family, mom and dad, her mom and dad, kind of afraid, because one of the tenets of truth at that time was you married inside the family. Marrying an outsider was not a good thing at all. So here's this guy, I'm an outsider. Well, the only way to change that is that I would need to profess. I'd been going to the gospel meeting, was impressed with the two workers, Elizabeth Anderson and Maxine Hayes. Wonderful ladies. Loved them a lot. And so there came a time when And I look back at it, basically, I was a perfect recruit. And it was pretty obvious that I already believed, so they weren't converting me to anything. And as I look back, underneath whatever that was said outwardly was, and they needed people in wall to wall. There weren't a lot of people that actually professed. The convention was there, which brought a lot of people at a certain time of the year. But anyway, I was the perfect recruit, and they recruited me. And might be a crude way of saying it, but so that was the beginning. And Sandy and I, during high school, I lived a pretty guilt-ridden life because we did a lot. We liked high school, and we would go to a movie now and then, and we would take part in some of the high school activities. I loved football. We would go to basketball games, and
We would go to shows too.
and so our secret life was pretty guilt-ridden. At least mine was, because I really,
Yeah, I was
Those were worldly things by the
Yeah.
church standards.
they were really worldly things. And so I think Sandy's mom knew a lot about what we were doing, and
But she didn't say anything.
she didn't say anything. And so there's just some of the thoughts that can run and go through your heart and mind at the time, and you know, you look back and that's just the way. That's
Well,
I think basically probably everything that we went through, every other teenager went through the same thing.
Well, when Don called me, because he was in the, he left school and then he joined the Army. He was hoping to be a Marine, but he only had one eye that worked, and so they wouldn't take him. But anyway, I didn't know that he joined. I thought that they recruited him. But someone told me RA stands for regular Army. That's not that. They recruited him, he joined. But anyway, so we had times where I was alone and I was maybe dating a few boys. And
She didn't tell me that.
no, but Don was with my sister Bernie. She was back in Massachusetts. So he would go there and he was worried about me. And so my sister said, well, why don't you ask her to marry you? Which was, I mean, I'm not teaching yet. I'm still in high school.
Well, that advice,
But anyway,
honey,
okay,
that
but-
advice was the dumbest advice
I
that,
know, but
that
he-
anybody could give at that
he
time.
got all his coins, and he called me. Well, he was my best friend. There's no question about it. We learned all our Shakespeare together. We learned how for me to.
So did he ask you to marry him then?
Yes, he did. And I said, well, if my mom and dad would say that I could, but I knew they wouldn't because I still had one more year of college. And I said, if your mom accepts it, then I'll marry you. But I was sure that they wouldn't. Okay, my mom, I talked to my mom, and my dad, he said, well, Don's asked Sandy, he said, it's about time. So you know that my family wanted Don to be in the family. And his mother said it was okay. So Daddy flew my mom and me back east where I didn't want to get married and I was scared to death. But Don said, well, he was scared too, but we got to go through with it now. So we did.
Almost 69 years later,
Here we
here
are.
you are.
Well, the thing was, after we were married, the next day, I realized this was right.
Yeah.
And I felt that God really put Don in my life.
Anyway,
so I
you
see
know,
that's the thing that I believe, that God was directing me.
yeah, and so when you're young, you do a lot of these things that you absolutely do not know what's going to happen, and you do them on faith. Actually, you don't do them on faith, you almost just do them because you're naive and ignorant. Because, anyway, because I was in the Army, and I was not an officer, and I had no profession, and I had no income, and so I asked this lady to marry me. Didn't make a lot of sense, but anyhow, so the first big rule that I thought that I broke was that if you professed you went into the Army, usually you waited until you were drafted, and then you went in as a conscientious objector. I could not go in as a conscientious objector. I mean, so I joined, I had a brother, he was in the Marine Corps and wounded very, very seriously in Korea. And I felt I was very, at that age you're idealistic and patriotic, and you should be. I mean, don't say that negatively at all. And I wanted to serve my country. And the idea of being a conscientious objector, and then you read all the history about how a lot of that came about, where an overseer, an older worker went to the government so that all of those who professed during World War II would go into the Army as conscientious objectors. But we didn't have any, the truth had no name, so he had to give us a name. And again, that kind of is a little bit dishonest in the sense that many say, well, we don't have a name. Well, yes, we do have a name. And we just don't talk about it. And then, a lot of things are just not talked about. We often say they're kind of just swept under the rug, or we just ignore them. And I've ignored a lot of things, and many people do, to keep the peace and to, to keep the positive things going. Anyway, where was I? So that was kind of a rule that I broke, and Sandy didn't know I joined. She assumed if you profess, you were a conscientious objector. And I could not bring myself to be a conscientious objector. That would dishonor my brother, dishonor my service to the country. Of course it wouldn't, but I mean, those were the thoughts that went through my mind. Anything, so I wanted to let people know that nobody was going to have to draft me to serve my country. I was going to volunteer to serve my country. That is just kind of the idealism you had at that age.
It's good.
Right. Yeah. And then so you're drawn into this family because it's better than what you had, but then you find
before you go, one other thing that was really troubling even at that time that I had to just kind of quit thinking about is that my mom and dad were going to hell. They didn't go to meeting, and the whole atmosphere of the truth was evangelical, where you everybody that you met, and if they didn't go to meeting, you wanted to bring them to meeting, and so they would be converted. And so I looked at my own mom, it's particularly my mom, and Mom, we have got to get you to the gospel meetings to save you, which we never we weren't successful. And I look back at that, and that was not good. And
Well,
You know, and psychologically, to go through that kind of thinking at that age is bad.
Mm.
Yeah, and you know, Mom, she knew a lot about the friends. She knew the friends.
Are you talking about Dad's mom?
Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah,
Not your mom.
Yeah, no.
Dad's mom, right?
his mom. And I was talking with her, and we weren't talking about the fellowship. But she said, "But Cindy, you don't wear makeup, and you don't play cards." That was it. That stopped the conversation.
Mm.
I said, "Mom, those aren't important," but to her they were. And really, in a sense, they were to me too.
Right, and see, that's the thing. And
It's
they
just-
were important to you, but you don't.
No, and
The spirit in
that's
which
not
you-
the
yeah.
beginning. That's not what you want them to think. You want them to
Well,
think
yeah.
about serving God
And I think,
loving Jesus.
yeah, and like when you're saying that, like one thing we were talking about the other night, and I hope it's okay to share this, Mom. I always felt like Mom wanted me to go on the work, and because of especially one conversation I remember of you saying to me that and you don't remember saying
I
this,
don't
but you
remember
did say
saying
it,
it.
and I remember it clearly. I think it was after convention. I was like 14 or something. She said, "Oh, honey, you'd be a good worker. You have a good personality to be in the work." And I remember then saying to my mom, I said, "Well, Mom, if I'm called to the work, I'll go in the work." And well, then I am, from a young age, all I hear over and over and over again is the need for the work and how you should think about the work. And this is the one true ministry, and there's always a need for workers, and we need more workers, and it's the best place and it's the greatest place. So I went through this terrible struggle that all the workers talk about going through, and God called me to the work, and then I finally submitted, and I gave up marriage, gave up career, gave up everything, and then you feel this peace, and you get all like Mom and Dad were happy for me, everyone was happy for me. No one ever gave me an option that, well, it's okay if you don't go into work. It's not necessarily the greatest place, and you can question what you hear in the meetings about the ministry, and it's okay to question scriptures that might be different than what you're always taught, because what we've learned and what I've learned is like, and it was just brought up, I just heard it brought up to an overseer. Someone asked him about those verses in Luke about when Jesus said right before he was crucified, he said, well, he that has a sword, take it, and he that has a money bag, take it. And like he ended the 2x2 ministry that was for that time. And now when you just let yourself be open to seeing, well, maybe it isn't what we were taught. You read about history and how the Jewish people, they were to be hospitable, and it was a urgent message to go out before the 3.5 years while Jesus was preaching. And then in Matthew, I think it's 22:35 to 36, it's like Jesus ended it. And when someone brought this up to an overseer, he kind of mocked it. He said, well, that's not really what Jesus means. Well, it's like, oh, we're going to just pick and choose when Jesus was literal and when he wasn't literal, and to our convenience. And then, so we're always taught, like Matthew 10, Luke 10. And no one was teaching me otherwise. And if they did, I would just say, well, they're just saying that because they're, want to justify their false church. And then you read in Acts where all these different instances where people are going out not 2 and 2, and where Philip goes and he's preaching all by himself.
Yeah, he is.
And not just, it wasn't a one-off. He wasn't a worker. He was married, because workers, we were like, there's no doctrine that preachers that preaching the gospel need to be celibate and single and do it for their whole life like we were taught. That was like the doctrine we understood. And so,
But you've been changed, Andy.
well, right, but I mean, that was a doctrine we were raised in, okay?
That's the one you...
And so, anyway, it's like, I never really saw, like, that was the conditions of the church and of faith and of believing. And so, that's like, and so then, and this is not a criticism of you, Mom, at all, but this is what was ingrained in me from what was ingrained in you, and then what was ingrained in me growing up. It's like, I should have left the work way before I did. But one of the reasons I didn't want to disappoint you. Parents have because there's never anything in the church that tells us, oh, hey, Andy, it's okay if you leave the work. And we were talking about that, like neither mom or dad, they never said, Andy, if you have second thoughts, it's fine to leave the work. But there's so much stigma attached to that. There's never a positive comment about leaving. But that's one thing I've been really, really, really thankful for, is since I have left, and there were things I'm not happy about that I did in the work, and that I've apologized for and done everything I can to make right. But mom and dad accepted me, and we've talked it all through, and they've graciously loved me as much or more than they ever have, and haven't made me feel less for not being a worker or leaving the work. And so thank you, because I'm deeply grateful for that. And I think we're all kind of learning, like, why did we believe all those things?
Yeah. Well, I will have to tell you that I have had a lot of sorrow in my life because of the way that I taught the kids. And now I know it was not good for them. The thing is I am so happy and I have peace right now because I love Andy. I love the woman that he married. And Rob, I love him because I know that they all love Jesus. Pam.
But Mother, even if we didn't love Jesus,
I would still be okay.
So that's still one of the things that we think about. It's like, that's still to say that, oh, well, I love them because they love Jesus, that's still a condition.
No, it's, if they did, I would be happy wherever they are, I think. Yeah, because you're making your own decisions. But they've been good for us. Yeah, So
one of the things, we'll just wrap this up. One of the things I was thinking about was, like, what is the purpose of life? And I often think, and I was talking to you guys about this the other night, like, so we love, like, why do you have kids? Like, all we've done, us kids, I know we've brought a certain amount of joy, and, but we've also brought heartache and added a lot of stress to your life. But I've always felt like I haven't had my own children, but it's like, why did God have kids? It's because he had love to give, and he wanted to give it. And so why do we have kids? Because something about the way God created us is we have this love to give. And like, even though Dad and I were talking about this, Dad never told me he loved me growing up. And it wasn't until, but I felt your love. And I was in my late 20s. I remember thinking, I should tell my dad I love you. And it was hard. Just like you said, it's hard to say I love you. And I remember one day I finally broke that ice and I told Dad I loved him. And anyway, over the years, I'm 56 now, so that's almost 30 years ago when I first said it. Every time we talk, I say I love you, or you say I love you, and the other one says it back. And it's just a really nice feeling. But you were never told that, right, Dad?
That's correct.
And then the feeling of it, this is what I love that you shared the other night, Dad. You tell us that feeling you had, you said, when your first child, Pam, when she was a little baby, putting her down in the crib or something, you had this like welling up feeling of...
Well, yeah, there's, you can say I love you, but is there feeling in it?
Yeah.
And a lot of times we can have the feeling of love, and like when I know our little, when Pam was just a tiny little baby, and you see them, so, you just feel love, and you can't say it. You can't say I love you, but you feel it.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of feeling of love, even though the words sometimes, when we were young and the way we were brought up, to just say those words out loud, and sometimes you can say it without that feeling.
Right.
And I think it's important that there is feeling.
Oh, for sure.
Feeling to when we say that. Just
Well, you
sort
always
of
told me you
a
loved me.
social way to say goodbye sometimes.
Yeah.
It hopefully it's more than that. And anyway,
Well, so
I wanted to say that one thing, God puts it in us, I think, for the most part, to want to combine our love in a little person, because it unites us together. And so when we had that little girl, and Don just called her his little princess, and he got candy for all the nurses, because they were always, so loving with that little girl. And it was so sweet. And I know that he loved Andy and Rob too, and I'm sure he told them when they were little that he loved them.
well, no, we didn't. That's what we were saying.
No,
No,
but
yeah.
when you were just
Well, we don't. What we know is, I don't think any of us doubted that
yeah.
you both loved us. Like, and that's the greatest gift. Like, Mom and Dad, if I could sum up the greatest gift you've given me, is I've never struggled with believing God loves me because I've always felt loved by my parents. And a huge struggle I know many people have is believing that they're loved and lovable. And you guys always made me feel loved and lovable. So thank you for that. And then I kind of think about this full circle, because I think, like, I remember some of the ways I talked to you, Dad, like, and you, Mom, especially teenager, early 20s, and even later in life. I wasn't always nice or say things or talk, just not nice. And I think, wow. And I remember apologizing to you, because I remembered something specifically one time I got really upset. I just said not nice things to you. I was probably 19, 20, 21 or something. And I apologized to you later, and you didn't even remember. But I appreciate the fact that you weren't worried about being our best friend, that you were just a parent, and you held boundaries. I remember one time you just told me to give me my truck keys when I was a teenager. I paid for all the costs for my pickup, but it was under your name, so it was your pickup. You just said, give me the keys, 2 weeks. And I didn't like it, but I'm thankful that you had those boundaries. So then I think about this circle of love that you've sacrificed so much for me and still do. And then I'm like, I think the beauty for me is some of the beautiful things that are happening now at the end of the life, where I can understand, because of my experiences, how much you suffered, or the stresses you went through raising a family, sacrificing for us, praying for us, being there for us, and to just be able to give that love back, so that you, and I think it's that way with God. Like, there's this circle, like, He wants to love us, and yes, we all disappoint God, we all disappoint our parents, but then the beautiful thing is that love soaks in, and then it comes back around and is given back.
Yeah, well, one of the things too, as you grow up, and you say these things about your parents too. Well, one of the things I think regardless of what you say, and even if you're sorry for what, you're always going to have your parents. Your parents are going to be there, regardless of how bad you are. If things are working the way they should, and that's sort of how God is too. I mean, we can be very human, and we can be very off the rails, but He's always going to be there. And I love that idea of that constancy. Those verses that say, we do ungodly things, but Paul said, you know, there is no condemnation to those who love Jesus. No condemnation. Now, and it's hard not to condemn when the people you love let you down. But no condemnation.
Yeah, that's.
Well, also, Andy, I don't even think we remember what we did, how we paid for you, or.
Well, honey.
We don't even remember
But
it.
the thing is, we don't remember what our parents did.
No, you don't.
So-
And it's because of love. It's just. Yeah.
Well, I'll take this gift and keep passing along
You know, and Andy, I think
to my new family.
you know, you ask what the purpose of life is. I think part of the purpose of life is just to pass on the goodness that we have and live the goodness and
I love that.
Love
and-
yourself
and
and,
many-
love your neighbor.
and-
Yeah.
most of the people do pass on goodness, and whether they go to a Presbyterian church or a 2x2 ministry church, or whether they go to the
Nature.
Wherever they go.
yeah, and there is a basic human goodness, and the purpose is to live it and pass it on, I think. And whether you say the origin of it is God, which it is, we would almost, you know, unless you're an atheist or anyway, it's hard to put it all in words.
Well, I think you've done a great job. Thanks, Mom and Dad. I love you.
We love you too.
Yeah. So,
And
thanks
we
for
love our
listening.
neighbors.
Yeah.
And we love God.
Yeah.
With all our hearts, soul, and mind.
All right. Well, till next time, Mom and Dad.
Okay.
Thanks for listening to 181 years of wisdom and experience.